Welcome to our listeners who are tuning into The DeWinter Difference, an audio podcast where I spend a bit of time with incredible executives I've known for years, and you get to listen in. I hope that our conversations are unique, fun, insightful, short enough to listen to driving from point A to point B, but long enough so that you can get some great takeaways that you can apply in your own careers, lives, and relationships. Today, I am very, very pleased to speak with my friend, Sheri Savage, Chief Financial Officer of publicly traded Ultra Clean Technology. Sheri has spent her career almost exclusively in high-tech manufacturing, and contrary to a lot of what you see in Silicon Valley, she spent the past 15 years at Ultra Clean Technology. We go back over 20 plus years, and our conversation is long overdue as we haven't seen one another in a while. Sheri, I really appreciate you both tolerating me all these years and joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So let's go back to my intro. You've been with UCT, which we'll refer to as Ultra Clean Technology going forward, for over 15 years, and the CFO for over 7. As a search professional, it brings a big smile to my face, as the average tenure for CFOs in the Bay Area is significantly shorter than that, and what research I did ran anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5 years. So can you share your professional journey with us at UCT and what's kept you there all these years?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I came in, I was actually pregnant with my smallest child, who's now almost 15. I came in thinking, this is a nice company. I'll see how it goes. And obviously 15 years later, I'm still here. I think part of it is, having a lot of opportunity to move around and do different things within the company, and the company's changed quite a bit. And I think that makes a big difference as to why you would stay for a long time. I came in as a senior director of finance. They had a material weakness on inventory that needed to be fixed, and really just didn't have as much of some of the audit rigor that I had seen at other companies, and that's why they brought me in. And as well as the FP&A side, didn't have as much talent on that as well. And I had come in through a lot of the larger OEM semi-cap companies that had a lot more experience with that. So as a result, they hired me, and I just slowly kind of moved up the chain as I stayed there. The company changed quite a bit, and that allowed me to do different things. I got a lot of experience on the banking side. I have done a couple equity offerings as well as larger loans. But I think the key thing is it really gave me the opportunity to ultimately become CFO, which, I kind of looked at that like that was just an awesome opportunity for me to take advantage of. And I've really enjoyed it. It's really allowed me to kind of expand my breadth of knowledge in finance as well as just as an executive leader. And that's really the reason why I've stayed in the company all these years.
Well, you were promoted into the CFO position internally. And I recently had an exchange with a different public company CFO who had an internal successor step into his seat. And this is a pretty prominent company. It was over $100 billion in market cap, so kind of a big deal type of company and a pretty significant transition. I ended up congratulating the amazing person who's now in the seat, but I also took time to congratulate that outgoing CFO who's still with the company, because it really spoke to the thoughtfulness, coaching, and strategic planning of not just that person, but of the organization on the whole. Because internal promotions to CFO positions, I'd like to say that they're frequent, but they're not as frequent as I'd like them to be or see. And so, given the multiple roles you've held at UCT, is this something you think about, as you're in your seat? And does that promotion internally resonate with you in a more profound way, or am I making a bigger deal out of this than I should?
No, absolutely. I think, I always love promoting people internally. And I think if you can get the right people in right jobs to be able to do that and also allow them to grow as they move through the company, that's really quite key. Awesome amount of experience for people that actually have the jobs that can grow into those roles. I find, at least in my experience, that, they know so much more going into those roles than getting someone that, is going to take 6 months to a year to come up to speed when they come in, fresh into a company. Not to say that you can't be successful doing that, because I think you can, but, I feel very thankful that I had the opportunity to really know UCT before I got into that role. I think it's a little scary stepping into a C-suite role when you haven't ever had one. And, knowing so much about the company really allowed me to do, I would say, a better ramp up of that, because I really didn't have as much experience on the investor side. I was mostly dealing with the internal, operating role within the UCT in terms of, running the business. But the external side, I didn't have as much experience with. So really, having that internal experience really helped with when I ultimately transitioned into dealing with the external side. But I've tried to hire people in my organization that can succeed me. It's not a obviously 100% done deal at the end of the day, but it's a
Hmm.
much better option to have someone, have that experience and go up through the ranks as far as I'm concerned. So I think it's a
Yeah.
great opportunity for someone.
How much of your role has transitioned to be external versus internal at this point?
Oh, it's humongous. When I first started, it was as a CFO, it was really not my natural inclination to be dealing with the external side. So I really had to kind of transition, and that happened obviously very quickly. But I think over the years, more and more of my role has transitioned to dealing with investors as well as the banking opportunities that we've had. So it's transitioned quite a bit. I know enough to be dangerous within the operations and everything, but I'm not in the middle of the detail as much as I used to be, and I really had to cognizantly step back and not be in the middle of everything and let the people below that work for me, that are probably much better at it than I am at this point, especially because they're running things day to day. But I really had to, step back and allow them to be able to do that, and obviously help guide them and give them my insight, my history. But I've really had to completely shift my focus and be more strategic, and really help the CEO more run the company versus be in the middle of every single little thing day to day.
It's funny how, as you transition over the course of your careers, and I've had to deal with this myself too, is, you know, you're pretty proficient at the things that you have to give up.
Yeah.
And that can be a hard thing to do. You've got to sever a lifeline to the things that were comfortable to you, that you were very good at, that people counted you on, counted for you to produce and manage. And it almost takes a significant intentionality to make that transition go well, because if you hang on to it for too long, people don't feel like you're giving them the opportunity, and it certainly impacts your ability to step into your new role and be successful too. Like it's tricky.
Oh, I totally agree. It is a hard transition for many people, and I find that, and I've seen it with certain roles where they work 24/7 and they don't delegate down, and they're not successful, their people aren't successful. So I'm a big believer that, it can take some time to transition into that, but I think it makes a big difference for the whole organization to be able to, continue to grow people within it so that they, are able to run more detail and more day-to-day stuff versus like some of the, higher level executives. I think it's a hard transition, but it definitely is a good thing.
Yeah. So we couldn't have a conversation without using the term AI or SaaS. It is all the rage. But the last time I checked, we still make physical products that are the foundation of all of those SaaS software and AI things. You are a hardware CFO, although you probably wouldn't want to be labeled such. I apologize for saying that, but you certainly have a great skill set in the area. Do you see a significant difference in the skills of a SaaS versus hardware CFO? And what are some of the things that you likely think more about in your role at UCT than somebody might at XYZ software or AI company?
Yeah.
And maybe that's an unfair question because you're not there, but like you have conversations with other, colleagues in the marketplace. So I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get asked about AI all the time, especially when I talk to investors and how that role plays into our company. But, I would say that fundamentally, I think a lot of things in finance are very similar. There's obviously revenue recognition and certain things are somewhat different. I think the strategy surrounding SaaS and AI with their subscriptions and selling software are much, much different. But, I think one of the things that is very important, and I just don't know how. I know it's still important on a SaaS or AI company, but for us, For a hardware company, one of the key things is working capital management that you absolutely have to pay attention to, as well as, capital expense that you are trying to manage. I am managing large numbers of inventory, not me specifically, I'm not in the warehouse, but we're managing the overall capital and cash needed to manage that. That's pretty heavy in a hardware company compared to, a SaaS company. I think the other thing is just, the capital structure that you have to have in place to be able to, have all these factories and the specific people associated with that. That's also something it's very different than, say, a software company. I do think, you can travel between the two. I think it's always a good thing to have a different perspective, especially as board members that are in different companies that have the software component as well as the hardware. But I think the working capital is probably the biggest difference between the two that I see at this point.
And for those non-finance people out there, that's the balance sheet.
Yes.
You think about that probably more. Well, I won't say that. I will say it anyway. You probably think about it significantly more than most CFOs do at other companies, because it's such a critical part of being able to look around those corners.
Yep.
Like if you're not on top of that, you cannot plan for 6, 9, 12, 18 months away.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. Yeah. So you have UCT is uniquely international. Most of the companies in the Bay Area, technology companies, are international, but you have a footprint that is significantly international with manufacturing and customers and operations. You started your career at UCT 15 years ago, but have been the CFO for 7 years. Can you comment on what it's like to be you internationally in the markets that you're in? I imagine it, and just the elephant in the room, a C-suite female executive, traveling to places that I assume could be a little bit difficult. How have you navigated that? And am I incorrect in assuming that there have been uniquely difficult experiences, for you in that regard?
I would say that I haven't had anything that has been, more uniquely difficult at UCT. Maybe it's because I grew up in the organization and I had a lot of credibility within, a lot of the different locations, and, a lot of people I've been here so long. I think I probably saw it more earlier in my career, especially when I was doing the Arthur Andersen days at multiple companies. I can recall going to Japan and that some of the male counterparts didn't even want to speak to me, or being the only woman in the room, when I did presentations back when I worked at different companies, and felt very kind of weird about that. I think as I've gotten obviously a lot more confidence in my ability, as well as, my career's grown a lot, I really just I don't even think about it anymore. It's kind of maybe it's a weird thing, and maybe it's the position that I'm in. I could see where, some women in lower positions would definitely feel that difference, but luckily I really have not at UCT. I think we've always tried to harbor a really open and diverse company, and I'm hoping that most everyone doesn't feel any impact to that. At one point I had started a women group, kind of didn't do as well during COVID, but I really try to harbor that, as a woman, you really need to take your power and be, be present and be there, and you're right at the table with everybody else. So hopefully, I think my presence as an executive there, gives some, I guess, insight to other women that you can continue to move up and you can have the big job. It's just, not any different being a woman versus a man.
What would, on that note of diversity, what would you tell your younger self about how we've done in the last 25 or so years in corporate America as it relates to creating really diverse organizations? And in sharing your thoughts, if you would imagine being that 25-year-old self, would she be surprised to know that we've come this far, or would she be disappointed we haven't come further?
Oh, she'd be completely surprised she's come this far, which is, I think, a good thing. I always was a big believer that, I would take opportunities as they came. I really didn't manage my career crazily, as I think, kids today probably need to, coming out of college. They probably have to manage it far more than probably we did when we started out. I think I'm amazed at where I've come to. I feel so lucky, for the opportunities that I've been given. Obviously, you create your own luck, but along the way, I've been in the right place and I've met the right people. And I think I'm truly ecstatic that the things that I've accomplished, and obviously people that I've worked with, and friends along the way, I couldn't do it without any of them. So, I feel like it's been a really great experience.
That's awesome. So on that note, what might you be doing if you weren't in the senior leadership CFO role you were in now?
Oh boy. I think there's probably multiple things that I could do. I'm really big into fitness. I would love, I probably lifestyle type business, whether it be as a CFO or a something in a lifestyle business would probably suit me really well. If I was going to go completely off the wall, I probably more of a event planner or wedding planner. I tend to be very organized and process driven, so I've built several houses and had to keep those organized. So that's something that I really enjoy, like like these projects where you're either building something or building physically something. I think that's kind of my deal as much as if I weren't doing my current job.
Good stuff. I don't envy the project stuff. Like certainly any house remodel I've thought about doing, like, oh my gosh. Well, I tell you what, you have been so good answering all of my questions. This is the time of our little conversation where I get to turn it over to you, and you get to ask me a question unscripted that I don't have any clue what is. So hopefully you'll be kind and nice, but yeah, you get to fire away.
Of course, yeah. No, you asked me about AI before, and I'd love to know from your standpoint, because you've been a long-standing recruiter in the Valley, like how you think AI is going to take on a broader role, both from a recruiter standpoint as well as like the employee experience. Do you think that's going to take any impact as it continues to grow?
Oh boy. So first, from a recruiter's experience, we talk about it all the time. We certainly are building practices around it, both in our consulting practice as well as our search practice, that has some focus in that area. It's relatively new, but AI is not really only a year old. It's been around for a little bit longer, but like the amount of money and resources and attention that it's getting are going to force all of us to think about it differently. I mean, even UCT, which is, a hardware company, and think, oh, how's AI going to impact, your products? Like, you get asked about it just the same as, companies in the social media space. So, we think about it a lot, and we are definitely gearing our business towards being able to answer those questions in the marketplace. From an employee experience perspective, I'm super conflicted on that. I mean, I don't go a day without hearing something about something GPT, Chat GPT, and I did this in 2 minutes, or I did this in 5 minutes, what took me a day. And I think doing things easily can sometimes get in the way of the experience of doing the thing, the connections that happen while you're in the process of building out a project, or building out a tool, or building out a spreadsheet, or building out an agenda. And I think we will lose a lot of those conversations despite the efficiencies of the end product. So I have concerns with that a little bit. I have concerns as a parent too. Like,
yeah.
I've got two 20-year-olds and a 17-year-old, and boy, things are going to be a whole lot different for them, and already are in even the 2 years that my kids have been in college. They, how the professors go about, teaching classes, grading classes, and the animus that is created between students who know one's doing one thing authentically and the other one's not. So it's complicated.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
It truly is.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So I look at it through a couple of different lenses, and currently the lens that I'm more concerned about is the personal, and how that is going to truly impact, our kids and our communities and our connections to one another. So I don't know. I hope I'm not being the old guy on the lawn who says, "Get off my lawn," but I sort of feel like that a little bit.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah. All right, final question for you, and then I'll let you rush off to do your real job. And I hope you've seen the movie, the Barbie movie. Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it.
And the thing you liked the most, and the thing you liked the least, if there is a least.
Oh, I didn't dislike anything about the movie. I think, I watched it with my husband, and I that part where America Ferrera does her kind of diatribe about being a woman, I literally teared up because I was like, oh my gosh, I understand this. This is like, it's, there, although I have not had, major impacts with being a woman, at UCT, but you still feel certain things along the way in life. And it's just, oh my gosh, it resonated with me in a very big way. So I think it was a great movie from a messaging perspective, and I think we need more of that out in the marketplace. I told my daughter, you have to watch it. So I think it's a really good message, and I definitely resonated with many things that got said in it.
That was one of the best 2-minute speeches of all time.
Yes, totally agree.
Just like, oh my gosh, you can't. I wonder how many takes it took to do that. It feels like she probably could have done that without a script.
Oh, I agree.
Like just drawing on experiences or whatever. Like, I don't need your script. I got this covered.
Yeah.
Well, look, it was so great to catch up with you, and you're so generous with your time to be able to spend with us. I hope everyone who's listening to this enjoyed it. And I do hope that our paths cross this summer, somewhere, somehow, and continued success in your role as an executive and a mother and a wife and a member of our community. And go get them today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the DeWinter Difference podcast. If you like this episode, head to dewintergroup.com/dewinter-difference to catch future episodes and share your thoughts, comments, or suggestions. And make sure to connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. This podcast is produced by the DeWinter Group, the leading recruiting firm in the Bay Area and beyond. We help top companies and people reach their fullest potential through world-class accounting, finance, and technology recruiting services.